Hi, I think we're ready to get started. I'm Larry Odell, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the History Center. We're very excited about this program and this exhibit we did on Mickey Mantle. And it wouldn't be possible without the Daily Oklahoman. We used their photographs. They donated their photographic collection, and we used their photos and their words for the exhibit. But right now, I want to introduce Steve Hawkins from the History Center, and he's going to do a special presentation. Thanks.
We're going to take care of a little official business first, and then I'll introduce these stars to you. The official business is this. First of all, this is now officially sanctioned in Oklahoma as Mickey Mantle Day. I mean, 7-7? Come on. Come on. All right. Whereas baseball legend Mickey Mantle was born October 20th, 1931 in Spavinaw, Oklahoma, and attended Commerce High School. And whereas Mantle played for the New York Yankees from 1951 to 1968, helping the team win 7 World Series. And whereas Mantle was a 20-time All-Star and 3-time American League Most Valuable Player. And whereas in 1956, Mickey Mantle won the American League Triple Crown with the highest batting average, number of home runs, and runs batted in. In 1974, he was voted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and in 1999, he was chosen for the Major League Baseball All-Century Team. And whereas many baseball fans, reporters, and historians consider Mantle to be the greatest switch hitter in the history of the game. And whereas in July 2016, the Oklahoma History Center is featuring the Mickey Mantle Baseball Hero in black and white exhibit. Now therefore, I, Mary Fallon, Governor of the State of Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim Thursday, July 7th, 2016 as Mickey Mantle Day. It's now law. All right. I'd like to present this to 2 of my heroes. David and Danny Mantle, would you please come over here just a second? Oh, heroes. You are my heroes. Here you guys. Give them a big hand, please. All right. We have... These guys, again, are my heroes. They're real heroes of mine. I just met David today. I've been on the phone and have been out to dinner and with Danny and his beautiful wife, Kay. And Danny said the last time we were together, we got to talking about all of our past experiences. It's funny how parallel our experiences are. As a matter of fact, they're so parallel, Danny said, it's a good thing we didn't meet up years ago. A really good thing. All right, the Mantle brothers. I love this. I love it. Also today, I'm going to steal a line from my favorite sports writer. Yesterday in his blog, he wrote, "Are you tired of that depressing Kevin Durant news? I've got a deal for you." And then he went on to explain what was going to happen today. Berry is a lifelong Oklahoman. He started his career at 17 years old. Can you imagine that? 17 years old. So he's been working in the field for what, 5 years now, something like that. Berry Tramel. He's going to talk to you today. Please give Berry a big, big hand. Probably the most recognizable voice in sports. Al Eschbach. Now, yeah. In the 60s, this guy wandered out here from Jersey City, New Jersey. He went to OU, graduated in journalism in 1968. And I'd like to today I want to announce to you, this is a real milestone for Al and for Oklahoma. Al has been in the business of sports radio for 40 years. 40 years. And like I said, the most recognizable voice in sports. You'll hear him in just a little bit. Our moderator today is a guy that I've known now for about 8, maybe 10 years. He's been here at the History Center for event after event after event. He's an Oklahoma City attorney. He's a historian. He's an author. We have his book, Baseball in Oklahoma City, in the gift shop out there. But Bob's written many, many books on many, many topics. I've been here for a few of the History Channel presentations and recordings that he's done. One thing you don't want to do is just walk up to Bob Burke and say, "What do you know?" Because you better bring a sandwich and a glass of milk because you're going to be there for a while. He's going to be your moderator today, and again, another one of my heroes. This is the crew. Give him a big hand. I'd like to turn it over to Bob Burke.
Mickey Mantle is the true icon. We always have icons, we have heroes in our life. But whether you called him the Mick or the Commerce Comet, Mickey Mantle, the greatest name in certainly Oklahoma baseball. And I submit, besides Babe Ruth, in the 140 years since Major League Baseball began in this country, there is no greater name, no more people. I recently did an informal, unscientific poll on eBay. I thought, how many Mickey Mantle items are there on eBay? So I punched up his name, and there were 4,000, more than 4,000. I tried to think of the 10 greatest baseball players besides the Mick and see how many items were on eBay. And the closest was Willie Mays at 1,200. So here, nearly 60 years, nearly 50 years from the time he retired, a half century, Mickey Mantle is still, to 2 generations later, still very, very popular. The Mick, a great, great icon and a great Oklahoman. Now, before we begin, Berry Tramel and I have a new book out called Oklahoma's 100 Greatest Athletes. Switzer wrote the foreword to it. We rank 1 through 100 the athlete. Jim Thorpe's number 1. Mickey Mantle is number 2. And deservedly so. So let's give away one of these, Barry. What do you think? We'll sign it for you. Whose birthday is the closest to today, the 7th of July? July 4th? 9th is closer. Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to give 2 of them away. So the 4th and the 9th. Is that okay? See us later and we'll sign these for you. Okay, good. Come get these books. Okay. Anyway, you'll love the book. There's a horse in there, you know. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Now, it's such a great pleasure to have Danny and David with us today. Who does David look like? I mean, he could walk down the streets. I'm so sorry that on Central or South Central Park Avenue that the Mickey Mantle restaurant's not there anymore, because I tried to go every year, but I'd have loved to have taken you with me, and some of the old timers up there would thought the Mick was still with us, you know, really, really. But David, let me start with you. We knew Mickey Mantle as the greatest hero of all time. I was the only Yankees fan in my little town of Broken Bow, only because Mickey Mantle was from Oklahoma. We'd had no ties in southeast Oklahoma to the Yankees, but we had Mickey Mantle. So we see him as an icon, but what do you, as a little boy growing up, how do you first recognize how large he was, larger than life? How did you first recognize that?
Well, I don't know. We always just thought of him as our father, and he always thought he wasn't a good father, but he was a great father to us, and you know we had a great mother too. But when I really realized what he meant to, say, just as fans, and it made me kind of realize too, you know, him not just being my father, was back in 1974. There was a old timers game at the old Arlington ballpark for the Rangers. And when they introduced Dad, everybody just stood up and, you know, applauded and, you know, screamed and everything for, seemed like forever. And that just made my hair on my arm stand up and all that. And that's when I just felt like, you know, but, you know, what he meant to the country and to baseball players.
Oh, yeah. He had been your daddy, but all at once you knew he was a hero to the world.
Right.
Danny, what's your feeling? When do you first recognize in life?
Well, I was born in 1960, and so I didn't really get to see a lot of his playing career, but, you know, by this time he was really big.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, really noticed it more like when we'd be in New York and that type of thing, and, you know, because we couldn't go anywhere. You know,
Yeah.
we were all
Oh, yeah.
kids
Oh,
thinking,
yeah.
oh, we're going to get out of this hotel room, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but it was, you know, even though that, you know, he tried to take us to different things, you know, took us to Globetrotters games and things like that. And, you know, when we'd go out to the stadium with him, you know, I think we played more football at Yankee Stadium than we did baseball. So it was, you know, we had a great time with him. But, you know, just notice and seeing all the people, how they reacted, you know, even his teammates.
Yeah.
It was just, and, you know, I think that's kind of what he had a problem with that, because he didn't like to be, he was a very humble guy, and he didn't like to be, you know, the one.
Doted over.
Right, and,
Yeah.
you know, because he knew all those other guys were, you know, as good or as he was, you know, and so, and he just loved the team, you know, and.
You know, describe a day, for example, if you're in New York and it's not a Yankees thing, but you're going to a Globetrotters game or you're doing something. And if you walk down the street in the late 1960s in New York City, everybody recognize him?
Oh yeah, and it was crazy. I mean, even up until, you know, before Dad passed, it was, and I liked it because I liked seeing him get recognition. You know, he always played it off, but you know, we would walk from the hotel to the restaurant, and, you know, no matter who was on the street, you know, it was Mick, you know, and, you know, the policeman, you know, no matter who it was, everybody knew him. And, you know, it was like I said the other day, it was like he was part of everyone's family. I mean, it was crazy. And so, you know, like an uncle or something, and everybody felt that way. So it was really neat.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, David.
I've got a funny story too that was make me think. I remember I was, you know, younger, and I was with Dad, and he had one of those big old floppy hats on, and he's trying to walk like this and everything, and, you know, he's had that limp and everything. So, but and we were walking along, and some guy's just walking. He goes, "Hey, Mick, how you doing?" And he goes, "Damn, I can't be not noticed anywhere." I said, "Well, maybe it's because you're limping."
That's good. Hey, David, now, you guys were privileged because you got to be around Yogi and all these people. If it was just socializing or whether it was visiting with friends, because everybody loved the Mick. And so what was it like as kids to be able to be around these guys? And how did you see people like Yogi Berra and Bobby Richardson and Casey Stengel? How did you see those people interact with your dad?
Well, you know, of course, they were just great friends, and, you know, back then they really did love each other. I mean, there was no animosity, and they were just really good friends, and they played as a team. But as kids, you know, we really more or less called them uncles too. And it's funny, my little girl, of course, she's 22 now, but she calls Whitey still Uncle Whitey, and it just. And she's asked me the other day, "Why do I call him Uncle Whitey?" I said, "Well, they're family, you know." Yeah. So, but, you know, that's how we were. We always, you know, we knew to, you know, not get out of line or anything around there, or, you know, our dads would let us know that. Yeah. But shoot, we were just happy to sit around and just listen to their stories about baseball and all that. And I love just sitting there and listening to them reminisce about the days, you know, and this and that. And I could just sit there, you know. Of course, we'd always be quiet because we're just going, you know, I don't care how many times I heard it, I still loved hearing it every day.
Yeah. Did your dad ever talk to you about sports? Now, because your grandpa had, from day one, I think, when he saw that he was a boy, I believe Mutt wanted Mickey Mantle to be a baseball player.
He
no
groomed
question.
him to be a baseball
No,
player.
he groomed him. I mean, by the age of 5, up by the old tin barn, you know, in Commerce, they were out by 5 years old. He was better than most high school players. But did your dad ever talk to you boys about a career in sports?
No, you know, Mickey Jr. was probably the best athlete in our family, or I know he was.
Yeah.
And, you know, but all of us could play. I mean, it was, you know, my kids are good ball players too. I think you know, it's in your genes and
Sure.
all that, but,
Struck out a lot.
Well, you inherited that.
yeah.
But when you hit it, it went a long way.
Bad legs to blame it on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just think that it's and he didn't really push sports on us, you know.
Okay.
And there was a you know, I played little league all through, you know, school into, you know, junior high, really, not in high school, but and you know, he couldn't come to the games or anything, you know. And so but we had, you know, a blast down, you know, what kids wouldn't want to be going to spring training, you know, and missing a month of school and having a tutor and hang out with, you know,
Yeah.
Yogi Berra and
Yeah.
Mickey Mantle and all
Yeah.
those guys. And,
Oh, my. Wow.
you know, we had Elston Howard taking us for steak on a stick and, you know, just, and kids, other kids would be like, you know,
Oh, wow.
and we, you know, and now that I look back at it, it was an excellent thing, you know. So it was, you know, it was just the time, and it was, you know. But Dad, no, he didn't push sports on us.
Yeah, it's like Danny was mentioning. We played so much football in the off season that I played a lot more football, and I felt more comfortable at it because I didn't feel like there was pressure there. But my dream was always to play for Tom Landry
Oh, really? Wow.
because
Interesting.
I was like a tight end and a wide receiver in high school and stuff. But you know, when I got to Baylor, I was too little. There ain't no way you're gonna play tight end at 175, 80 pounds.
That's right. Al Eschbach. Put the microphone there, right there. Al, now you're growing up in Jersey, and Mickey Mantle's big news. How big was Mickey Mantle on the East Coast?
Well, I grew up right across from New York City. I could see the Statue of Liberty from my bedroom window. As a little kid, there were three teams back there then: the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Yankees. And there was three of the great center fielders: Mays, Mantle, Duke Snyder with the Dodgers. And we used to have arguments. Who was the best as little kids? And here I am with the Mantle sons, and I could lie like I've done a lot in 40 years. Willie Mays was my idol. I hated the Yankees. But I totally respected your dad. When things were going bad in the 60s, for him, he didn't go, I got to go to the Dodgers, the Giants, they're really good. He didn't leave town like a certain basketball player did here. But Mickey Mantle was bigger than life to little kids. We idolized. These guys were idols, and you just can't imagine, and how big, and to everybody. I mean, he was bigger than any sports. Remember, then the NFL wasn't that big. The NBA wasn't that big. Mickey Mantle was like a god to us growing up back then. And I was outnumbered as a Giant fan. Everybody was Yankee fans. Total Yankee fans. But it was just, it was a great experience. And I remember so many times getting on those subway trains, going to Yankee Stadium, watching them play, watching them drag bunt. I mean, hitting left-handed. How many people do that now? Power hitters. But no, absolutely, you just can't imagine as a kid what a thrill it was watching every game on WPIX Channel 11 in New York City with Mel Allen doing the games. I watched so many Yankee games. They all televised, and the ultimate respect for the greatness of the player. But we had a lot of fiery debates I usually lost, like I do now.
Hey, Al, how important was it to you as a kid that you had a hero, someone you could look up to like that?
It was really important. I mean, the first time I ever heard about Oklahoma was, there was a movie out then. You think I knew anything about Rodgers and Hammerstein, whatever the hell the name is? No, I didn't. I knew about somebody called the Commerce Comet.
Yeah.
That's how I first got introduced when I heard the state of Oklahoma, when they were talking about the Commerce Comet. This dude from Oklahoma.
Wow. Berry Tramel. Now, we know from history, if the books are right, that Mick hurt his leg first, I think when he was playing for Joplin, before he made it to the majors, that's when he got hit in the shin and got osteomyelitis, first problems. But then, when he comes up to the Yankees in 1951, I think he gets hurt in the World Series. He's going after a fly ball, turns it somehow, and messes up his leg really bad. Berry Tramel. And Mickey Mantle would have never used it for an excuse. But in 18 seasons, he made baseball history like no other. The question's always been asked, how much did that leg bother him? And what could he have done had the leg not bothered him?
Well, the story of Mickey Mantle is that in the 1950s, he was as good of a baseball player as there ever was. Me and Al have actually debated Mantle versus Mays, and I've tried to straighten him out. Willie Mays was never as good as Mickey Mantle was at his best. Now, that's nothing against Willie Mays. I mean, he's Willie Mays. The difference in their careers was that Willie was better in the 60s than Mickey was in the 60s. They came up in the same year, 1951. But Mickey's health, his athletic ability, which was such a huge part of his phenomenon, he was not able to sustain that because of the leg. And what he was in 1955 and 1956, which is when I say he's as good a baseball player as there ever was in 1955 and 1956. He wasn't the same player in 1964. Well, Willie Mays in 1964 was still, the Willie Mays we saw in 1954. So that's really what it cost Mickey, was the longevity, the excellence at the end of his career, which a lot of the baseball greats, some had and some didn't. But Mickey in his 30s, which would have meant the 1960s, he wasn't able to sustain it, and you saw the drop-off in his career, or he would have had numbers. The difference in Mays and Mantle's home run totals, I think, is 124. I think it was 660 to 536. I'm going off what I learned in 1974. So that's but I think that's right, and all of that's attributed to Mays being able to keep playing because Mickey's health deteriorated. But you can judge greatness in two ways. You can judge greatness for the totality of someone's career, but you can also judge somebody's greatness at any particular point in time. And Willie Mays in 1955 and 1956 really was as good as anybody ever was.
Now, why have so many Oklahomans been in baseball? 16 years ago, I wrote a wonderful book called Glory Days of Summer. Actually, Mr. Gaylord, one morning at breakfast with Lee Allen Smith, Mr. Gaylord said, Burke, why don't you write a book about baseball? I said, well, I think I'll do that, man. I'm a Yankees fan, and I'm a Mickey Mantle fan. I think I'll bet you I can find 200 guys who played Major League Baseball with Oklahoma ties. Well, after about 9 months and going to the Baseball Hall of Fame, who gave me an intern for 6 weeks to look at old contracts to see if there were addresses from Oklahoma, turns out 1 out of every 10 men who ever played Major League Baseball in America has an Oklahoma tie, 1 out of 10. 1,400 out of the 14,000 who played since 1875. Either born here, died here, developed their talents here, like a Pete Incaviglia at OSU. But nobody can get close to the icon level of the great. Not even Mike Turpin, not even any of the Braves can get, not even Joe Adcock, okay? Nobody can get to the level of Mickey Mantle. So why is it? Why has Oklahoma produced so many incredible baseball players?
Well, I mean, I don't know that when you compare us to other southern states or warm weather type states, I don't know if we've got any lead on anybody else, but we do have the weather, and we did have the culture 100 years ago and 80 years ago. Basketball hadn't formed to any meaningful degree until, in this part of the country, until the 30s or 40s, and football was still relatively new. People don't understand how old baseball is. They played baseball in the Civil War. Civil War soldiers played baseball, and baseball was really founded in New York City in 1845. So that's a long time ago. So they've been playing baseball a long time, and Oklahoma's a place that really, its history comes from people who came here, in terms of the Anglo culture, and people came from here for mining, which, that's what was going on in commerce, the mining industry. But all over the state, people came here for agriculture. They came here for oil. They came here for all kinds of reasons, and then they brought baseball with them. And we had town teams develop. Most towns had high school didn't play baseball, or colleges for quite a while. But every town had a team. Carl Mays, the great pitcher whose career was marred because he threw the pitch that killed Ray Chapman in 1920, the only major leaguer ever killed in action. Carl Mays learned to pitch in Kingfisher, and pitching for the Kingfisher town team. So these small settlements just embraced baseball, something you could do on a weekend day. Nobody played at night, of course, so it just built from there. And the culture of when Mickey Mantle came along, in 1940s, growing up in northeastern Oklahoma, you have to remember what Oklahoma was like. Bud Wilkinson wasn't here when Mickey Mantle got really good at baseball. So OU football wasn't any kind of phenomenon. Henry Iba's basketball team was doing pretty well in Stillwater, 1944, 1945, 1946, but it wasn't a statewide craze or anything. People, if you were interested in athletics, you played baseball. And if you were interested in sports nationally, you followed baseball and boxing and maybe horse racing. That's probably the three biggest sports in the 40s. And so, you guys were talking about Mutt Mantle, grooming Mickey to be a baseball player. Well, that's exactly what he did. Let me tell you what Mickey Mantle probably was and what he really could have been. He would have been one heck of a football player. For crying out, a guy that could, he's a fairly big guy for the 1940s, 1950s, and that could run that fast. I mean, he'd have been a heck of a football player. But, and today our athletes sort of migrate. The really great athletes migrate to football and basketball. Back then, they migrated to baseball. And so Mickey Mantle comes along, and 1951, he's a rookie. 1952 is when everybody says, holy crap, look at this guy. And then, of course, we saw what we saw. And Oklahomans were, by then, Bud Wilkinson had gotten OU football going. But Oklahoma was searching for a hero, and they were searching for, as Bob said, an icon. And, people always talk about the nation's impression of Oklahoma and what they think of us over the years. I'm glad Al said what he said. The problem with Oklahoma historically is not that they think badly of us, it's that they don't think of us at all. We're not on their, historically, we weren't on their radar. And in 1952, all of a sudden, Oklahoma was on the radar to a lot of people east of St. Louis because of Mickey Mantle. And Oklahomans embraced that. And here's a kid from, a tiny spot in the road in Oklahoma who was from Oklahoma and didn't mind acting like he was from Oklahoma. And we thought that was great. And, everybody, commerce to the Wichita Mountains is a long way. But that didn't matter. Oklahoma City to commerce it's a long way today. I mean, if you want to get in the car and drive, it's a really long way if you're trying to go in a car built in 1947. You might make it, you might not. You might have to change tires twice on the way. So it really wasn't like he grew up in Oklahoma City or even Tulsa or places where a lot of people knew of him, but just the fact that he was from Oklahoma made people embrace him. And the fact that he embraced the Oklahoma story himself. And when he became as big as he did, it was just, an incredible morale boost for a state that we still were recovering from the Dust Bowl. We were still looking for heroes. Rodgers and Hammerstein, I don't know if they ever set foot in Oklahoma before they wrote the musical, but the state of Oklahoma thought that was the greatest thing ever. I mean, people in New York are singing about us. And it's really how we thought. And then here's a baseball player who's the best in the world, and he's representing us. He's showing the New Yorkers that we know what we're doing in some things. So that's how Mickey Mantle became an Oklahoma hero. You know, it's a little bit of a happenstance. Commerce isn't that far from Kansas. It's not that far from Missouri. They got a little mining in Kansas. They got a little mining in Missouri. He could have been born and grown up in Kansas as easy as he was Oklahoma. And what a dang shame that would have been. But he wasn't, and he didn't, and he's an Oklahoman. And, you know, we couldn't be more proud.
He was so proud of being from Oklahoma because on the Major League Baseball channel a few months back, there was a piece about him, and they was talking about how proud he was of his Oklahoma roots. And somebody had interviewed him in New York one time, they interviewed him when they were out in the World Series playing in St. Louis. And he says, now, you're from New York, right? He says, Lord, no, I'm from Oklahoma, right down the road. So he was very proud of that. Hey, David, you talked about some of the friends of your dad's that you were around as family. Surely you got a Billy Martin story.
Yeah, we got a few of those, but some of them I can't mention. But one of the biggest, memories we have with Billy is that, when each of us turned 13, that was like our rookie year, and we got to start going hunting with Dad and Billy. Ooh. And so, of course, when I got there, Mickey Jr. had already been with them, but we'd always go hunting with Billy because, in the off season, it seems like he spent most of his time with Dad. And of course, I'm sure Mom didn't like that too much, but he was, just part of the family too. But we'd go hunting, and Billy was, just that character like you hear. And we were out hunting one day, and he'd shoot at anything. And so we were coming back to the thing, and that's because of him that day. We had to start unloading all the guns instead of just leaving it in the back. But he saw a wild boar going up the side of the hill, and Mickey Jr., ducked just in time, and he's sitting there unloading all the guns on him, trying to hit that thing. But, Billy was, I guess, I don't know, Mom always said she raised 5 boys, counting Dad, and I think Billy was like the brother of Dad. So they just seemed like they could just, walk out the front door and something would find them. But, they loved being together, and they were like 2 kids together. I'm sure they just playing pranks on each other, and it was really more hilarious to watch them. And I remember Billy one time telling us, this is when long hair was coming out in the 70s and stuff like that. And, he'd even get on to us, your all's hair are getting too long and we need to get a haircut. Yeah. But, we loved having Billy around. It was just, and of course, we still don't, in fact, I just got a text from Billy Martin Jr. Yesterday, and sent me something about Mantle Manors that was there at Cedar Creek and outside Dallas. Yeah. But, we still get to see Billy Jr. and talk to him also. But Billy was just like another one of us. It was just, there's a lot of stories, but, like I mentioned, there's some of the really good ones we can't mention.
Now, what was Billy your dad's best friend on the Yankees?
I really think it was really, they were all good friends. But yeah. Dad, it was, the 3 Musketeers was him, Billy, and Whitey. Yeah. So, Whitey was a really good friend, too.
Now, Whitey's the only one left.
Yep.
Of those 3. Yeah.
I remember at spring training, Whitey would, at the Gulf Ocean Mile or whatever, Whitey would be like on the bottom floor, and then we were right above him on the 2nd floor.
Wow. Wow. Danny, what player do you remember besides Billy Martin that had a great relationship with the family?
Really, besides like Yogi and Whitey and Billy, Phil Rizzuto was very close to us.
Okay, now Rizzuto was older than your dad, probably by what, 10 years or so?
At least, yeah.
And by the time your dad came along, they played together maybe just a year or 2.
I want to think that Phil retired in maybe 56 or something.
Well, maybe so. Okay, not too many years. So did your dad look up to him?
Yeah, he did because he played on all those great teams.
Yeah,
and it was funny because Phil always told that story. Because when Dad first went to the Yankees, he went up as a shortstop. Well, he wasn't a very good shortstop, and so but Phil was reading about this kid, and he said, I was packing. I had my stuff. He said once he saw Dad play, he unpacked. So,
Yeah, your dad was not meant to be a shortstop,
No,
was he?
no.
yeah.
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
but no, Phil Rizzuto, he was just a nice guy. He was,
Holy cow.
yeah, he was,
Yeah.
just a sweet person, and that's somebody that we always remember. And we used to have baseball fantasy camps back in the '80s, and all those guys used to come and be the coaches for those camps, and it was just such a fun for us and the campers to listen to Dad and Phil Rizzuto and Billy and all Whitey, everybody, because you could just tell how much they loved each other. So.
And Phil also rode with us on the bus. We had a couple of buses because we were all staying at the St. Moritz then. That was still, booming hotel there in the 70s. And I can remember we're all sitting there waiting to head up to Cooperstown, but Phil and his family rode up on the bus with us. And one thing I just remember, we're all sitting in Mom and Dad's room at the hotel waiting to get on the bus, and we're watching Blazing Saddles. It just came out.
Which, by the way, has an Oklahoma connection. Because do you remember the incredible African-American sheriff?
Yep.
Born in Chickasha, Oklahoma. That's right.
Oh, really?
That's your Oklahoma trivia for the day. Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Outside of baseball, who was a hero to Mickey Mantle? Outside of baseball.
Well, besides, I think his dad and grandfather, golly, it's just, he got to meet so many people. I can remember one time, I don't know if he was really like a hero to Dad. We'll have to think about that for a minute. Maybe Danny can think of someone, but we were out in Vegas, and I was still too young to go to the show, but here's Dad was standing here, Mom was standing here, I'm standing here, and here's Elvis. And I'm sitting there looking up at them, and Mom and Dad are talking to Elvis, and he was in that white leather outfit, and he was in, great shape, and then I'm just going, who's this guy again?
That's cool. That's cool.
But, it was funny, being with Dad, it's just, you met so many people. I mean, shoot, he went to the White House, I think, under 3 different presidents. Wow. And, I've got a letter, from JFK, and then, of course, we got to meet Gerald Ford through the other way, but from Betty Ford's.
Yeah.
But
okay.
I got to say hello
That's
to him
good.
there. Yeah.
Yes, that's good. Oh.
But I don't know who you think might have been Dad's hero.
Well, he used to talk a lot about the boxers, the old boxers back in New York in those days. What was the guy that he? Yeah, him. But who had?
Well, there was a picture. Jack Dempsey had a restaurant
Dempsey,
in New York,
yeah.
and I've seen a picture somewhere. It used to hang in the Mickey Mantle restaurant in New York of him and Dempsey.
Yeah.
A great picture of him and Jack Dempsey.
He would talk about Dempsey a lot. Of course, Dempsey was huge back then.
Yeah.
And but I think he kind of got to be friends with quite a few of the boxing guys, and but it was always, if he was with them, then it would have been Yogi and Billy and everybody, and because they all kind of hung out together. So.
And I can't believe I forgot this, but when Dad was growing up, I do remember this. Stan Musial was his for baseball, because up in pitcher in that area, Cardin and all that stuff. They just had the radios, of course, but they always got. I guess here in Oklahoma, you always got the St. Louis games, and so Stan Musial was his
absolutely
big fan.
Yeah. I grew up on KMOX in St. Louis, Harry Carey and Joe Garagiola,
There was a funny story about that. Some sports writer, when Dad first went to the Yankees, they asked him, they said, no, who's your idol or something like that, and Dad told him, Stan Musial. Well, he got in trouble from the Yankees because he was supposed to have said Joe DiMaggio.
Oh, Al Eschbach, what do you think the legacy is of Mickey Mantle now a half century after he retired from baseball?
I think probably the younger generation who did not see him play do not realize greatness. What Mickey Mantle could do was he could steal bases. He was a great defensive player, and Berry's right. If he didn't have the knee problem, by the way, tell me, did DiMaggio set that trap up in the outfield, guys? Okay. Screw him. Yeah, again, think about this incredible home run hitter who could drag bunt, who could run. I mean, who had a great arm. Let's talk about his defense. This guy was really, there was not a weakness in his game. It just, in other sports, we can say, okay, gee, I don't know how Jim Brown would do today. I think pretty good. Or, people say, well, how would Will Chamberlain do? You know what? If I have Mays, Aaron, and Mantle, I'm kicking ass. Okay? They're better than any day player today. It is that is one thing. Today's baseball players are simply, in my opinion, one sport where you compare, and the baseball players of today simply are not as great as the great baseball players of yesterday, land.
I think you're right. Yeah. Berry Tramel. What made Mickey Mantle great? What made him the icon that he is?
Well, I would say it was the right place at the right time is what it was. If Mickey Mantle had been signed by the Senators and played for Washington and then moved to Minneapolis in 1961, he'd have been an unbelievable player. He'd have been great. But he wouldn't have been this American icon because somebody named me an American icon from the Senators or the Twins. You can't do it. What else made him great was his name. There's some cool names in sports, but there's not too many names that roll off your tongue like Mickey Mantle. And, I was born in 61, Danny, so I was a year behind you. So when I first really figured out what's going on, 1967, I was 6. Your dad played 67 and 68. I got to see him play live once, Kansas City, up at Old Municipal Stadium in Kansas City. And so I never got to see him, the real Mickey Mantle. But let me tell you, when I was 6 years old, I heard the name, and I knew it was something special. And the Yankee mystique, the pinstripes, the stadium, the championships, the New York environment that Al talked about, all those things were just the perfect stage for a kid from Oklahoma to come on and be great, and everybody takes notice, and everybody says, this is what we're looking for. So it doesn't the fact that circumstances launched his, what I call his mythical status, and mythical doesn't have to mean false. It just means, it's just sort of hard to believe. But it really did happen that, a kid from Oklahoma arrived in New York City at 1951 and could run faster, was stronger, and hit farther, and fundamentally sound. That really did happen. So all those things combined, they win titles in 51, 52, and 53. His first 3 years, they win the World Series. So, and then, of course, they won a bunch more later. So all those things together just sort of launched the iconic status of Mickey Mantle. And of course, he was a great enough player to live up to it. The truth about baseball is there have been all kinds of phenoms arrive on the stage. And some of them actually produce early, but not very many produce consistently, and not many of them live up to that status. Mickey Mantle arrived on the stage just at the right time, and he launched, and he never really quit soaring. So it was just the perfect time.
I was just going to mention real quick, too, I think what else it was, too, with the Yankees, there was always that pride and the tradition that is built into each player. That when you come there, you're following a lot.
Absolutely. Pride of the Yankees. They could name a movie that. Oh.
I got one last thing to say. Is something the guys were talking about earlier. I wanted to point out was the one thing that always impressed me about Mickey Mantle. This happened after he died, when we dedicated the stadium and we dedicated the statue in the Mickey Mantle Plaza down at the ballpark, and they put together the big ceremony. Lee Allen Smith put it together, and I thought that'd be a nice deal. And they invited me to the night before. They had a big dinner at the Petroleum Club, and I got to go. And I got there, and my eyes got this big because there were literally about 25 of the old Yankees there. Oh, yeah. Yogi Berra, Moose Skowron, Whitey Ford, Tony Kubek, whoever. I can't remember all that were there, but a bunch of them, virtually all of them that were able. And the way they talked about him. And the truth of the matter is, this wasn't a big deal outside of Oklahoma City or Oklahoma. And this doesn't even mention a line in the paper in Philadelphia or Los Angeles or someplace. Oklahoma City's doing something to honor Mickey Mantle. It wasn't that a big deal to anybody, but Mickey's teammates still thought it was a big deal to honor him. So I've always thought he had to be an incredible teammate for those guys 40 years after he played, 30 years after he retired, for those guys to still care that much about him. It showed me that he was an incredible teammate.
Very well said. Very well said. We've got about 8 or 10 minutes, right, that we can do some questions from the audience. And we have a microphone here somewhere. So think of a great question you'd like to ask one of the members of the panel. You need to write that in the column. Ooh, Casey Stengel stories, the question was. Yeah. Okay, David? Because Casey was the manager to what? 61?
Till, I think, 60.
Okay.
Or 59 might have been the last year.
Remember, it was after the 60 World Series.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. After the, yeah.
What I just remember is, Dad always thought of him as like his second father and everything. But there's one kind of sad story, but, it's also, too, is, Casey knew how he depended on Dad. It was, I forgot what World Series it was, but Dad's grandmother had passed away. And, of course, it was, I forgot what World Series. I wish I could remember. But after she had passed away and Dad was wanting to maybe go to, come back to Oklahoma and go to the service and everything like that. And he just kind of looked at Dad. He goes, well, we need you, son.
Oh,
and
wow.
so, Dad didn't get to go to it. But so Dad stayed there and, played in the World Series instead of coming home.
My goodness, that's a wonderful story.
That's why Dad always told me, he goes, if you're not in the hospital, you be where you're supposed to be.
Woo, okay. Yes, sir.
David and Danny, when you ask, and I got to believe you did, who did your father say was the best baseball player he ever played with, and who was the best one he ever played against?
Well, I was going to say a little while ago, him and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays were always probably at that time, the three best ball players there were. And I can remember hearing Hank Aaron's, give Dad a very nice compliment about, when Mickey first came up, there was no one better. He was strong, he could run and throw. But I heard my dad in his, in the later years say that he thought Hank Aaron was better than he and Willie. And so, Hank Aaron was probably one of the better ones.
I remember another time, too, Dad always thought that Ted Williams was the best hitter, which, that's pretty much, Ted proved that himself, too, but Dad always thought he had the best swing. Yeah. Well, that's another story. I just remember speaking another story for Casey. Before the game, I remember Dad saying, it was like Joe D's last year, I believe, and Joe had a bad foot, I think it was, and so Casey had told Dad before the game that he goes, hey, look, the skipper's got, that bad leg or the bad foot, and, he goes, you kind of take care of, more of the ball. So, one was kind of hit closer to center field than where I think Dad was playing right or something. And so Dad just took off for it as fast as he could. And, some folks do say that maybe Joe D waited too long to call him off. But, who would have known, too, that Dad's, when he did go to stop, that his cleats would have got stuck in the sprinkler head. I mean, just one of those weird things. I think it was just part of Dad's destiny that helped make him that kind of player.
Mine's not really a question. It's a story about Mickey in '61. we were at the Yankee game in Kansas City, and we always got autographs after the game. So Roger Maris was standing on the steps of the bus, and he looks out at Mickey, who was still signing for us. And Roger said, "Hey, Mick, the fried chicken's getting cold." And Mickey said, "I got to finish signing these autographs."
Wow.
I've got a story about your dad a little bit. It's pure acceptance. And a guy who was a family friend of ours, fortunately still alive, played for the Red Sox. He got his nickname as Ted Williams' caddy. A guy named Gene Stevens that was around Oklahoma City forever. And Gene was a little bit bitter about having to play behind Ted. And he said, Dad, he said, I made it to the big leagues when I was 19 years old. He said, that's talent. He said, I had talent. And I'd always loved to talk baseball with Gene. And he had a great story. And I said, well, who were the best you ever saw, Gene? And he said, I had the misfortune to play behind the greatest hitter that ever lived. So he said, I got to play the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings for Ted because his knees were bad. But I said, who's the best baseball player you ever saw? I said, was it like Willie or something? He said, not even close. He said, it was Mickey. He said, we played against each other in American Legion ball. And he said, I played for Fayetteville, and he played for Joplin. He said he was magnificent. He said he's the best baseball player I ever saw in my life. And Gene saw a lot of them. So, 18-year career in the major leagues. So there you go. Pure acceptance is a big deal.
Yeah, that made me think of another story. I remember, saying after like the wherever they were at, the opposing team, or if they were the home team, after they would get done getting warmed up or doing their warm-ups and stuff like that, the other team would always come out and watch Dad take his batting practice.
Wow.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Mickey's relationship with the New York press was not always cordial. Could you elaborate on why some of the writers in New York savaged him at times, especially?
Well, I just remember one story Dad was telling us is, of course, it was '61 when Roger was and him were having the home run derby, more or less, and what Dad liked about that year was because, the press and everybody and all the fans were booing Roger, and he goes, that's the first year I felt at ease.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for enjoying and participating in the very first Mickey Mantle Day. Thank you all for coming. Before you leave, though, I want to recognize a couple of people. Back in the back, Monty, Brittany, raise your hands for me, would you? The owner and marketing director for the Mickey Mantle Steakhouse. They have partnered with us on this, and that's why this is such a success. Thank you all so much. Also, the Mantle powerful DNA doesn't stop right here on the stage or right back here. Son and daughter. Stand up for me, would you? Yeah. And it doesn't stop there. I don't know your name. Mickey Mantle's sister?
Oh, Barbara.
Barbara. Aunt Barbara is here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now there's a real hitter. I bet you Mickey would tell you that. Would you like to come up, please? Yeah. Would you? As a personal favor to me.
1, 2.
Can I call you?